Chapter 10. Luxembourg, a princely house, not a royal one. A grand duchy without grandeur. Luxembourg occupies a peculiar, almost comical station in the European monarchical pantheon. It is the sole sovereign grand duchy in the world, a state whose ruler bears a title that, in the feudal table of ranks, stands below that of a king, yet above that of an ordinary duke. It is a linguistic and juridical curiosity, preserved from the 19th century for no other reason than that the great powers, who were redrawing the map of Europe in the aftermath of Napoleon, could not agree upon whom to bestow this scrap of earth, and in the end created a buffer state with an artificially inflated status. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, the Luxembourg monarchy is not even a monarchy in the strict sense of the word. It is a princely house, headed by a grand duke, a title that, in its origin, implied, not sovereignty, but vassalic dependence. And although Henri of Luxembourg is today, in form, a sovereign monarch, his dynasty, the House of Nassau-Weilburg, has never been a royal one. They have been dukes, princes, counts, anything at all, save kings. Their elevation to the status of grand dukes was no fruit of conquest, of dynastic marriages, or of divine right, but the product of backroom bargains struck at the Congress of Vienna and of the international treaties that followed. In this chapter, we shall apply the selfsame criteria as to the other European monarchies, and the verdict shall prove, perhaps, the most humiliating of all. For if the Windsors of Britain at least pretend to be kings, the Nassaus of Luxembourg do not even make the attempt. They know their place. They are the junior partners in the European monarchical club, and their legitimacy rests, not upon blood, not upon history, but upon a dusty family compact of the year 1783, which no one, save themselves, acknowledges. 10.1. The Grand Duchy, a title that cries its own inferiority aloud. The first thing that strikes the eye, upon looking at Luxembourg, is the very title of its ruler. Grand Duke. Not king, not emperor, not even archduke. Grand Duke. In the feudal hierarchy of the Holy Roman Empire, the title of Grand Duke, Großherzog, was an artificial creation, first for Tuscany, and thereafter for a series of German states elevated by Napoleon or by the Congress of Vienna. It occupied an intermediate station, higher than a mere duke, yet lower than a king. A Grand Duke was no fully sovereign ruler in the medieval sense. He either acknowledged the suzerainty of the emperor or was the creature of the great powers, to whom he owed his very existence. When, in 1815, the Congress of Vienna created the Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, it was no recognition of ancient rights, but a political compromise. The territory of the former Duchy of Luxembourg was raised in status to that of a Grand Duchy, and was transferred, in a personal union, to King Willem I of the Netherlands, by way of compensation for the German lands he had lost. Luxembourg became, not an independent state, but a province of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, governed by the same monarch, yet under different laws. Yet why precisely a Grand Duchy? Why not simply a duchy, a principality, a kingdom? The answer to this question lays bare the whole cynical mechanics of 19th century monarchical diplomacy better than any textbook of history could do. Willem I, the King of the Netherlands, received Luxembourg as compensation for his lost German possessions. Yet, at the selfsame time, Luxembourg was incorporated into the German Confederation, a league of German states, in which the representatives of every sovereign monarchy of the region had their seats. And here there arose a problem of protocol, which today seems the stuff of anecdote, yet which, in 1815, determined the fate of territories and of peoples. Within the German Confederation, there were kings, Prussia, Bavaria, Saxony, Württemberg. There were Grand Dukes, Baden, Hesse, Oldenburg. There were dukes, princes, landgraves. The title determined the rank determined the place in the hierarchy. The place in the hierarchy determined the political weight. Willem I, being the King of the Netherlands, could not take his seat in the German Confederation as a mere Duke of Luxembourg. That would have placed him beneath the German kings, a thing unthinkable for a sovereign monarch, however small his country might be. The solution that was found was as ingenious as it was bureaucratically absurd. Luxembourg was raised in status. From an ordinary duchy, it was transformed into a Grand Duchy. This title, artificially devised by Napoleon for certain German states, occupied an intermediate place, higher than a duke, yet lower than a king. It permitted Willem I to sit in the sittings of the German Confederation with his dignity intact, and without any slight to his royal honor. Ponder this. The status of a territory the destiny of its inhabitants, their place in the European political system. All of this was determined by a question of the protocolary convenience of a Dutch monarch. Luxembourg became a Grand Duchy, not because it possessed any historical right to such a status, not because its people desired it, not because it reflected any objective reality whatever, but because, otherwise, Willem I would have felt himself awkward in his sittings with the Prussian king. This is no state building. It is court etiquette elevated to the rank of international law. And this etiquette determined the fate of Luxembourg for 200 years to come. This humiliating status, a Grand Duchy under a Dutch king, endured until the year 1890. The Luxembourgers were the subjects of a foreign monarch who looked upon their country as a private estate, yielding an income. When, in 1867, the Treaty of London proclaimed Luxembourg a neutral and independent state, the Grand Duke was still the Dutch king. Luxembourg obtained its independence upon paper, yet did not obtain a monarch of its own. And even today, when Luxembourg is a fully fledged member of the European Union and of NATO, its ruler remains a Grand Duke and not a king. Why? The official version runs, "It is how things have turned out, historically." The real reason is this. An elevation of the title to a royal one would demand an alteration of the constitution, international recognition, and, what is most critical, would pose an awkward question: upon what ground, precisely, do the Nassau-Weilburgs lay claim to royal status? They have never been kings. Their forefathers were dukes of Nassau, a microscopic German principality, annexed by Prussia in 1866. They have no royal blood. They have no royal history. They have nothing but the family compact of 1783 and the will of the great powers. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, this is a fundamental defect of legitimacy. A monarch must be a king, not a Grand Duke, not a prince, not a count. A king. A title is no mere assemblage of words. It is the reflection of a sacral status. A king is anointed unto kingship. A king is the fountain of the law. A king stands above all mortals. A Grand Duke is an administrative office, created for the governance of a territory that the stronger players could not agree how to divide among themselves. The Luxembourg monarchy is no monarchy. It is a duchy that has been promoted, whose ruler bears a title devised in order that he might not be given too much honor. 10.2. The Nassau Family Compact of 1783, a private bargain elevated to the rank of a constitution. Let us now turn to the document that serves as the formal foundation of the Luxembourg monarchy. It is the Nassau Family Compact, Nassauischer Verein, signed on the 30th of June, 1783 by 6 representatives of the various branches of the House of Nassau. What manner of document is this? It is a private agreement among aristocrats. No statute of any state. No international treaty. No constitution. 6 German princes assembled and settled among themselves how they should inherit from one another in the event of the extinction of one branch or another. They divided up their domains, as one divides an inheritance in a will. They did not solicit the opinion of the peoples who inhabited those lands. They did not obtain the assent of the Holy Roman Emperor. They simply concluded a family bargain. The essence of the compact was this: the possessions of the House of Nassau were to pass in the male line. Should one branch become extinct, its lands were to pass to the next branch according to seniority. Women were wholly excluded from the succession. It was the classic Salic principle, clothed in the form of a private law contract. 30 years passed. The Napoleonic Wars turned Europe upside down. The Holy Roman Empire collapsed. The German principalities were carved up, annexed, mediatized. The House of Nassau lost the greater part of its possessions. Yet the Family Compact of 1783, by some miracle, survived every cataclysm. What is more, it was recognized by the Congress of Vienna in 1815. Thereafter, it was confirmed by the Treaties of London of 1839 and 1867. And, at the last, it was incorporated into the Luxembourg Constitution of 1868. Mark well this juridical construction. A private agreement among 6 German princes, concluded in 1783, became the fundamental law of a sovereign state. The Constitution of Luxembourg, in Article 3, declares outright, "The crown of the Grand Duchy is hereditary in the family of Nassau, in accordance with the compact of the 30th of June, 1783. This is an absurdity. A constitution is the fundamental law of a state, adopted by the people or by its representatives. It cannot refer back to a private contract concluded 100 years before its own adoption by a group of persons who had no connection whatever with Luxembourg, 4. At the moment when the compact was signed, Luxembourg was an Austrian province, and Nassau was an independent duchy in Germany. It is as if the constitution of a modern republic were to appeal to the last will and testament of some medieval baron. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, this is a fundamental violation. Dynastic law is no private bargain. It is an objective order, subsisting independently of the will of individual persons. When 6 princes signed a compact in 1783, they were not creating a new law. They were merely giving written form to the subsisting customs of inheritance within their family. Yet to elevate that compact to the rank of the constitutional law of a sovereign state, that is a juridical absurdity. The Luxembourg monarchy is no monarchy founded upon right. It is a monarchy founded upon the private arrangement of 6 German aristocrats, which the generations that have succeeded them have, for some inexplicable reason, continued to observe. 10.3. Adolf of Nassau, the king who lost everything, and the duke who gained everything. Before we proceed further, it is necessary to fix a fundamental fact, which the Luxembourg propaganda assiduously suppresses. Luxembourg is no state in the classical sense of the word. It is an administrative dynastic fiction, created by the great powers to resolve problems of their own. Luxembourg had no moment of national awakening, like Greece or Italy. It had no centuries-old tradition of sovereignty, like France or England. It did not even possess a dynasty of its own. One had to be imported from a German backwater when the Dutch line became extinct. Everything that Luxembourg possesses today, its flag, its anthem, its constitution, its seat in the United Nations and in the European Union, all of it derives from decisions taken at Vienna in 1815, at London in 1839 and 1867, and from a family compact signed by 6 German princes in 1783. At none of these points of decision was the people of Luxembourg present. No one asked the Luxembourgers whether they wished to be a grand duchy, whether they wished to be beneath the Dutch crown, or whether they wished to receive the German Prince Adolf as their monarch. Luxembourg is an artificial construct, not in the sense that all states are, in some degree, artificial, for all frontiers are drawn by men and not by God, but in the sense that Luxembourg has never possessed any inner, organic ground for its existence. It was created as a buffer. It was preserved as a compromise. It was raised to the rank of a grand duchy for reasons of protocolary convenience. Its sovereignty is no fruit of a people's struggle for independence, but the fruit of the inability of the great powers to agree upon whom to bestow this scrap of land. And when the Luxembourgers of today plume themselves upon their ancient duchy, they plume themselves upon the fact that, 2 centuries ago, their forefathers were used as small change in a diplomatic horse trade. Their national identity is the identity of a pawn upon the chessboard of the great powers, which had the good fortune to remain upon the board when the game was over. In 1890, Willem III, the King of the Netherlands and Grand Duke of Luxembourg, died. He had no sons. His sole surviving daughter, Wilhelmina, inherited the Dutch throne. Yet the Luxembourg throne, in conformity with the Nassau family compact, could not pass to a woman. And here, upon the scene, stepped Adolf, the former Duke of Nassau, a man of 73 years, who had lost his own duchy 24 years before, and had been living since as a private person in Vienna and in Wiesbaden. Who was this Adolf? From 1839 to 1866, he had governed the Duchy of Nassau, a tiny German state, with its capital at Wiesbaden. In the Austro-Prussian War of 1866, he had sided with Austria. Prussia was victorious, Nassau was annexed, and Adolf was deposed and stripped of his throne. To be sure, the Prussians left him his castles and his estates, and paid him an immense compensation in securities, some 15 million guilders, which rendered him one of the wealthiest men in Europe. He lived as a private person, traveled, collected works of art, and seemed to have quitted the political stage for good. Yet, in 1890, the family compact of 1783 suddenly made him the nearest male heir of the House of Nassau. Since every other branch had become extinct, and the Salic law excluded Wilhelmina, Adolf became Grand Duke of Luxembourg. Mark this situation. A man who had lost his own throne as a result of a military defeat now receives another man's throne as the result of a dynastic accident. He had no tie whatever to Luxembourg. He had never dwelt there. He did not speak Luxembourgish, a dialect of German. He was a German prince, whose own state had been wiped from the map a quarter of a century before. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, This is usurpation in its purest form. Adolf had no right to the Luxembourg throne because he had never been the sovereign ruler of Luxembourg. His pretensions rested exclusively upon a family compact, a private bargain, which could not create sovereign rights. What is more, he himself was a deposed monarch, whose legitimacy had been annihilated by an act of conquest. Can a deposed duke become a lawful Grand Duke? The answer is plain: he cannot. Yet the great powers, grown weary of the Luxembourg question, recognized Adolf. The Constitution of Luxembourg was patched up. The Parliament swore its oath to him, and the former duke without a duchy became the Grand Duke of a country he had never set eyes on. Since that day, every Grand Duke of Luxembourg has been a descendant of Adolf. They reign, not by right of conquest, not by right of blood, not by divine anointment. They reign by right of the family bargain of 1783 and of international recognition. This is no monarchy. It is an administrative office, transmitted by inheritance within a single family. 10.4. Morganatic marriages in the House of Nassau-Weilburg, from Pushkin to a Cuban waitress. The Luxembourg dynasty, like all its European sisters, has systematically violated the principle of equal marriage. Yet, in the case of Luxembourg, this violation wears a peculiar, almost anecdotal hue. Prince Nicolaus Wilhelm of Nassau and Natalia Pushkina, the brother of Grand Duke Adolf, Prince Nicolaus Wilhelm, married, in 1868, Natalia Pushkina, the daughter of the great Russian poet, whose great-grandfather was a black slave, purchased at the market of Istanbul. And this stigma proved sufficient for the marriage of Prince Nicolaus Wilhelm to be accounted morganatic, and for his children to be forever excluded from the line of succession. Natalia could not bear her husband's surname, nor the title of princess. The reigning Prince of Waldeck-Pyrmont bestowed upon her the title of Countess of Marienburg. Her children by this union received the title of Counts of Marienburg, and were excluded from the succession both in Nassau and in Luxembourg. This is the classic instance of how dynastic law operated in the 19th century. A prince marries the daughter of a poet. His children forfeit their rights to the throne. All is precise. All is according to the rules. Yet, in the 20th and 21st centuries, everything altered. Grand Duke Jean and Josephine Charlotte of Belgium, the sole marriage of the past half-century that formally conformed to the dynastic principles. And what did it yield? Precisely nothing. Their descendants, Henri, Guillaume, Felix, Louis, have, one after another, contracted morganatic unions, completing the dilution of a princely blood that was doubtful enough to begin with. A single equal marriage has not rescued the dynasty from its degradation. It has merely thrown that degradation into sharper relief. Grand Duke Henri and Maria Theresa Mestre. The present Grand Duke, Henri, married, in 1981, Maria Theresa Mestre, a Cuban, the daughter of a banker, born in Havana. She has no royal blood. She is no aristocrat. She is a commoner. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, this union is morganatic. Their 5 children, the heir Guillaume among them, are the issue of a morganatic union and ought not to inherit the throne. Hereditary Grand Duke Guillaume and Stephanie de Lannoy. Guillaume, the elder son of Henri, married, in 2012, Stephanie de Lannoy, a Belgian aristocrat of a comital line. She possesses no royal blood. Her forebears were counts, yet never sovereign rulers. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, this union is likewise morganatic. Their son, Prince Charles, is the issue of a morganatic union. Prince Louis and Tessie Antony, the younger son of Henri, Prince Louis, married, in 2006, Tessie Antony, a commoner, a former waitress who had served in the Luxembourgish army. She bore a son before the wedding. This union was so egregiously morganatic that Louis, at the moment of the marriage, renounced his rights to the throne, both for himself and for his descendants. Subsequently, in 2017, the couple were divorced. Tessie received the title of Princess of Luxembourg, an instance without parallel for a divorced commoner, and went on with her life in London. Prince Felix and Claire Leidmacher, the second son of Henri, Prince Felix, married, in 2013, Claire Leidmacher, the daughter of a German billionaire, the proprietor of a company manufacturing telecommunications equipment. She has no royal blood. The marriage is morganatic. Summary table of the marriages of the Luxembourg dynasty. Member of the dynasty's spouse extraction status of the union. Nicolaus Wilhelm, brother of Adolf. Natalia Pushkina, daughter of a poet morganatic. Grand Duke Jean Josephine Charlotte of Belgium, Princess equal. Grand Duke Henri Maria Theresa Mestre, daughter of a Cuban banker morganatic. Hereditary Grand Duke Guillaume Stephanie de Lannoy, Belgian, Countess morganatic. Prince Felix Claire Leidemacher, daughter of a German billionaire morganatic. Prince Louis Tessier, waitress, soldier morganatic. The result of the 6 marriages contracted in the Luxembourg dynasty over the past century and a half, but a single one is equal. 5 are morganatic. The present Grand Duke, Henri, and his heir, Guillaume, are bound in morganatic unions. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, the entire present Luxembourg dynasty possesses no right to the throne. 10.5. Abdication as the norm. The crown passed on like a relay baton. In Luxembourg, abdication has become the norm. It is no exceptional event brought about by a crisis, as in Britain in 1936 or in Spain in 2014. It is a routine procedure for the transfer of power. Grand Duchess Charlotte abdicated in 1964 in favor of her son, Jean. Grand Duke Jean abdicated in 2000 in favor of his son, Henri. Grand Duke Henri announced his abdication in 2024 in favor of his son, Guillaume. The transfer of power took place in October of 2025. Mark this, 3 abdications in a row. 3 successive generations in which the monarchs voluntarily lay down their crown and hand it to their heir during their own lifetimes. From the standpoint of classical dynastic law, this is a catastrophe. We have already anatomized this argument in the chapters upon Britain, Denmark, and Spain. A king cannot go into retirement. A crown is no office from which one resigns upon a pension. It is a sacral burden, borne until the grave. Abdication is an acknowledgement that the monarchy is no divine institution, but a job, which may be handed over to a successor when one grows weary. In Luxembourg, this principle has been driven to the point of absurdity. The Grand Dukes abdicate, not under the pressure of scandals, as did Juan Carlos, not for the sake of marrying a divorced American, as did Edward VIII, but simply because that is the custom. Papa reigned for 36 years, grew tired, and now I shall have my turn. This is no monarchy. It is a family business, in which the father hands the management over to his son when the latter attains his maturity. Moreover, the Luxembourg Constitution expressly provides for the possibility of abdication and for the procedure of a regency. Article 6 ordains, if, at the moment of the death of the Grand Duke, his heir is a minor, the regency is exercised in accordance with the family compact. Article 7. If the Grand Duke finds himself unable to govern, the regency shall be provided as in the case of a minority. That is to say, the Constitution acknowledges that a Grand Duke may find himself unable to govern. This is no force majeure, illness, captivity, madness. It is a subjective decision. I am weary. I am unable. Hand the regency to my son. And then, when the son attains his majority or his capacity, the regency comes to an end, and he becomes the full Grand Duke. This is no monarchy. It is an office with a flexible schedule. 10.6. Juridical conclusion. A princely house upon the charity of Europe. Let us now draw the threads together. Let us apply to the Luxembourg monarchy the criteria of classical legitimacy. Criterion status elucidation. Royal title absent Luxembourg is a Grand Duchy, not a kingdom. The title of Grand Duke stands below that of a king. The dynasty has never been a royal one. Blood absent the Nassau-Weilburgs are a German princely/ducal line. They are no royal dynasty. Indigenat grossly violated Adolf was a German prince who had never dwelt in Luxembourg. The dynasty has no roots in Luxembourgish soil. Dynastic continuity grossly violated the personal union with the Netherlands, 1815 to 1890. Adolf became Grand Duke, not by right of inheritance, but by the family compact of 1783. Foundation of authority, a private bargain, the Nassau Family Compact of 1783, a private agreement among 6 princes, elevated to the rank of a constitution. Absence of morganatic marriages systematically and grossly violated. Henri married Maria Theresa Mestre, a commoner. Guillaume married Stephanie de Lannoy, a countess, not of royal blood. Louis married Tessier, a waitress. The monarch is not the servant of parliament. Grossly violated. The Constitution of 1868 defines the powers of the Grand Duke. Article 32. The sovereign power belongs to the nation. The Grand Duke exercises it in conformity with the Constitution. Abdication normalized. Charlotte, 1964, Jean, 2000, Henri, 2025, 3 abdications in a row. The monarchy has been transformed into an office, transferred according to a timetable. Conclusion: the Luxembourg monarchy is illegitimate upon every count. It is not even a monarchy in the classical sense. It is a princely house, at the head of an administrative unit created by the great powers in 1815. Its rulers have never been kings. Their rights rest upon a private bargain of the year 1783. They systematically violate the principle of equal marriage. They abdicate the throne as though it were a post in a counting house. Luxembourg is the smallest and the most artificial monarchy in Europe. It subsists, not because it possesses any right to subsist, but because its abolition would demand an excessive quantity of bureaucratic exertion. It is simpler to leave all as it is. Let the Grand Duke, once every few decades, pass the crown to his son. Let the taxpayers foot the bill for their palaces and their ceremonies. Let the Luxembourgers pretend that this is normal. Yet, from the standpoint of classical dynastic law, the Luxembourg monarchy is a nullity, an empty space, a princely house without royal blood, without an ancient history, without a sacral legitimacy. Simply a family of wealthy Germans who had the good fortune to find themselves in the right place at the right time, at the hour when the great powers were carving up Europe, and did not know to whom to give the tiny patch of earth that lay between France and Germany.